In ancient Israel, a once united kingdom is now split. Judah in the south, a land holding onto the memory of David and Solomon, and Israel in the north, forging a new identity under a different king. Israel in the north is ruled by Jeroboam, a leader determined to secure his throne and the loyalty of his people, even if it means breaking with tradition. Jeroboam, fearing the loss of his people to Jerusalem, sets up golden calves in Bethel and Dan. He creates new gods, a new priesthood, and new rituals, hoping to unite his kingdom, but instead sowing seeds of confusion and unrest. This act of rebellion fractures the nation's faith, replacing true worship with idolatry. The sacred traditions that once bound the people together are now overshadowed by uncertainty and doubt. The people follow, drifting from the path of their ancestors. The memory of their covenant with God, once etched in stone and heart, begins to fade into the background of daily life. The golden calves, meant to offer security and unity, become enduring symbols of separation and spiritual decay, their presence a constant reminder of what has been lost. The land itself seems to wait, silent and heavy with the consequences of turning away from God. The hills and valleys bear witness to a people at a crossroads. Against this backdrop of division and uncertainty, a personal tragedy is about to unfold, one that will reveal the depth of divine judgment and the cost of disobedience. The story begins not with armies clashing or earthquakes shaking the earth, but with the quiet suffering of a single family, their pain echoing the nation's spiritual crisis. Here, in the silence of heartbreak and hope, God will send a message, a warning and a promise that will echo through generations, shaping the destiny of a people and their faith. In the heart of Tirzah's palace, where stone walls echo with the weight of royal burdens, King Jeroboam's beloved son Abijah is suddenly struck by a grave illness, leaving the royal household in turmoil and fear. Helpless in the face of his son's suffering, the king finds himself unable to rely on his own priests or the idols he once trusted. Instead, he turns to the prophet Ahijah, the very man who once prophesied his ascent to the throne, hoping for a miracle. Fearing the prophet's condemnation and the judgment of the people, Jeroboam sends his wife in disguise, cloaked in secrecy, to seek out Ahijah's counsel. She carries only humble gifts, simple tokens of hope, hoping to conceal her true identity and perhaps buy a blessing for her ailing child. The irony is unmistakable. The king who led his people to worship false gods now seeks the true God's help, but does so in secret, unable to face the truth openly. Jeroboam longs for God's blessing, yet refuses to surrender his pride or change his ways, attempting to manipulate the divine for his own ends. His wife's lonely journey to Shiloh becomes a symbol of the king's own spiritual confusion and distance from God. Jeroboam believes that a disguise and secrecy can hide the truth from God's prophet, as if human schemes could outwit the divine. But the lesson awaiting him is clear. Nothing is hidden from God, and every secret will be revealed in time. In the end, desperation and deception cannot outwit divine judgment, nor can they bring the peace the king so desperately seeks. The queen arrives at Ahijah's home, her disguise useless before the blind prophet. God has already revealed her identity to Ahijah. "Come in, wife of Jeroboam," he says, exposing her deception instantly. Ahijah delivers God's message. Jeroboam was chosen by God but repaid him with idolatry and rebellion. Because of this, disaster will fall on Jeroboam's house. His dynasty will be wiped out. The child's death will be a sign, marking the beginning of the end for Jeroboam's family. "When you return home, your child will die," the prophet declares. The queen's hope is shattered, the king's schemes are exposed, God's judgment is certain, and no disguise or offering can change it. The fate of Jeroboam's house is sealed. In the midst of judgment and sorrow, the prophet Ahijah reveals a poignant truth. Only in Abijah, the dying child of Jeroboam, is there found any good toward God. While the nation reels from the consequences of its king's choices, a single heart shines with a glimmer of faithfulness. In a world clouded by disobedience, Abijah stands out as a rare light, a reminder that God's gaze falls not on outward power, but on the quiet goodness within. He alone among Jeroboam's children will be mourned and buried with honor, spared the horror and disgrace that will soon befall the rest of his family. His passing is marked by genuine grief, a testament to the goodness found in him and a contrast to the fate awaiting his kin. This detail is a flicker of hope. God sees the individual heart, even in a corrupt house. Even when darkness seems to cover the land, God notices the smallest spark of righteousness and preserves it. It foreshadows a greater story. Centuries later, another son would come. Jesus, perfectly good, would enter a broken world to bring salvation, embodying the hope that Abijah's story hints at. Abijah's death is a sign of judgment, a sorrowful necessity in a time of rebellion. But Jesus' death will be a victory over judgment itself, turning tragedy into triumph and opening the way to life. Even in darkness, God's plan includes redemption. His purposes move quietly, often unseen, but always toward restoration and hope. The story hints at the gospel. God values righteousness and weaves hope into tragedy, turning even the bleakest moments into the seeds of something new. The fate of one child points forward to the hope of all, reminding us that God's promises are never forgotten, even in the smallest lives. In the darkest chapters, God is already preparing the way for grace, quietly shaping a future where hope will rise again. The queen returns home, her disguise meaningless, her heart heavy. As she enters the city, her son dies just as the prophet foretold. The nation mourns the one good son, while Jeroboam's doom is confirmed. The king's schemes have only hastened his downfall. The story warns rebellion and self-made security lead to ruin. Yet the glimmer of goodness in Abijah points to God's ultimate plan of restoration. Even as Jeroboam's house falls, the promise of a future king, Jesus, remains. In judgment there is hope. God's story moves ever toward redemption. Are you ready for the next chapter? Just click here to go straight to it.